Well, every time I think about it, I'm like in my head, West Virginia, something. Yep, I'm only human.
I was gonna say, not often do you fall into the mainstream crowd, Aaron, but you definitely do on this subject.
I don't know where you get that impression. I feel very mainstream. Yeah.
Are you being sarcastic or are you being serious?
I I was being serious, but now that I'm like really considering it, like there's a lot of retards out there, and I'm only mildly so. I'm spectrum adjacent, is what I like to say.
I don't actually identify as being on the spectrum, but I definitely identify with it.
Exactly.
Speaking through you, not through myself there.
No, no, I think that applies to you too, Nate.
No, it doesn't. I'm not spectrumal.
Yeah, okay, well, this isn't a good example of. You're not making a good
Yeah, that was a
argument.
It's an isolated incident.
I think nowadays, uh, like I used to get so bothered when people are all like, "Oh, I have ADHD," or they diagnose themselves through the internet. Um, they say they have ADHD or they're autistic or whatever, but I kind of think that most of us are kind of getting to that point now, just because of the short form content that we all consume. I don't think it's good for our brains.
Even before that, like I definitely don't think short form content is good, and just being able to like instantaneously jump from one thing to the next. But I think for a while, I mean, it's compounding, right? But like there's for a while now, there's been a lot of just distractions, period, right? Like we're just surrounded by distractions, and that definitely doesn't help.
Yeah, just an overabundance of stimulus.
Yeah.
Stimuli.
Yeah. I know. I feel like sometimes I have to like make myself actively practice having a longer attention span.
Like
Because I
reading
don't want
books
to lose
helps a
that.
lot. Like if you keep
Yeah,
reading, that
that's what I
really
mean.
helps.
Reading books. Yep, reading books or just I don't know, forcing myself to even engage with, like if I'm going to sit down and watch something to be like, I'm not going to sit down and watch YouTube. I'm going to watch a movie. Like something where I have to sit and engage with it
You know,
well,
it's
because sometimes it's hard to like I fall into the trap of like I watch a lot of YouTube and it's not something that used to be as much of an issue for me, but in the last few years, it definitely has become where I watch a lot of it. And I still do watch a lot of like longer form things on YouTube, but they're still not long form in the sense that like watching a movie is. It's like, oh, I watch 20-minute videos versus like watching YouTube shorts. But it's still not the same. Like you're still like, okay, I watched for 20 minutes. Now I got to find something
yeah,
else. Watch for
no,
10 minutes,
like
find something else.
I laughed, but it's definitely true. Like there's a lot of people that cannot sit down and watch a movie without getting up and doing something else or scrolling on their phone
Or
every once in a
literally
while or something.
the number of people I have heard of, not so much I think our age group, but like Gen Z and probably like definitely Gen Alpha and I'm sure Gen Beta will be the same way, but that they don't watch movies normally. They watch them on like 1.5 speed,
Yeesh.
which is insane to me.
It
I'm like,
also
that is
like
not how that was meant to be engaged with.
Okay,
it's
so
also
what
like
generation are we?
I don't even know or care.
Me neither, but at the same time, like, I definitely think there's a difference between us and uh, those who fall before us and after. Just because, like, I grew up as a child without having the internet, all the time in my face. But at the same time, like, uh, as a preteen and then a teenager, I did have a cell phone. It didn't have real access to the internet, but you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
there's levels to this
Hmm.
internet exposure stuff, and I think that's really what uh, separates the generations. I don't know about a specific year. That's just my humble opinion.
Well, it's also about the just the accessibility to it also now, right? Like the fact that I mean, like the iPad kids thing is kind of a joke, but it's
Oh
also
yeah,
absolutely not a joke. It's
it is.
100% real,
Yeah,
right? And
as
that's
someone who
not something
works,
that existed 10, 15 years ago.
you know,
Right. Yeah, you had like kids, like when we were growing up, you had like kids that had, you know, a Game Boy, you know, or something like a DS, but it's not the same, you know. It's not just unlimited, like kind of hours and hours and hours of just kind of mind-numbing entertainment. It was interactive, and people just didn't, like, parents didn't rely on it in the same way I don't think that parents do now, of, oh, this will shut my kid up, this will keep them
Right.
occupied, this
Yeah.
will keep me from having to do my job as a parent, because I can just stick them in front of a screen, which I feel like is where a lot of that comes from, is like, this makes my kid be quiet, so I'm just going to put them in front of a screen no matter what we're doing.
We sound like a couple of boomers.
Well, speaking of screens, let's start with this before we get into it. Aaron, what is
What's up?
something you've been watching recently?
Ooh, don't even get me on that.
That's,
Have you guys
it's
heard
absolutely what I'm
of-
trying to do.
Have you guys ever heard of the show Pantheon?
I
Is that
just
the
heard of it
one with
recently.
Jeff Goldblum?
Okay, no Jeff Goldblum. What'd you say, Karina?
I said I just heard somebody talking about it the other day and recommending it as like a show that a lot of people, I guess, haven't heard of, but that was highly worth watching, so it's on my list.
Well, yeah, so it's super good. AMC Plus. It's an AMC Plus original, so that's why no one ever heard of it. They made 2 seasons right off the bat. It's a complete story, so you don't have to worry about that. I always hate when they start a show and then they don't know how long they're going to go for, and
Mhm.
so it's all in flux and it just dies off randomly because they cancel it. But that's kind of what happened. They made 2 seasons. They released the first one, and it bombed so bad because they didn't have any marketing for it. Kind of, like a Firefly situation. So they just didn't even release the second season. The only countries they did that for was Australia and New Zealand.
What?
Yeah. And so, nobody watches it, of course, and it's really unfortunate because it is so good. Oh my goodness. Um, I love it. I recommended it to both my younger sisters, Emma and Natasha, and to my surprise, they actually listened and they watched, like the first episode, and then they binged it just the same as I did within like 2 days. And they just released the second season to Netflix, which is
Okay,
pretty sweet.
that
It's
was
on
my
Netflix.
question.
Yeah. But when I watched it in the beginning of February, they only had the first season, and I was like, "Well, where's the second season?" That's where I learned about all the nonsense behind why they canceled it, which was for
Had to
tax reasons.
VPN that.
That's what I should have done, but I read on Reddit that they had the complete second season on YouTube, and it was a pretty like good quality upload.
Hmm.
It's just they took out all the copyrighted music, which I'm gonna watch it again now that it's uploaded because in the first season there was actually some real like the music choices behind the show were really good. It is such a good show. It's about uploaded consciousness, not AI but UI, and all
Mhm.
the ramifications behind turning people into digital gods. It's so good, so good.
Okay,
Nice.
that's getting at it. I guess I'll go next because Aaron, just off your recommendation, I'm going to add it to the list because this your last recommendation slapped pretty hard.
It did, didn't
Uh,
Yeah, it
it?
did.
Didn't it? Oh, you watched it too,
It
Karina?
was so good.
So Scavenger's
Yeah,
Reign
I did.
was pretty damn good. Not gonna lie. It's a slow burn, and it's weird because it's a slow burn with little to no climax. It's kind of just like a simmer the whole time because it's not about the plot. There really is no plot.
Other
or
than
there's a
whoa,
very
aliens.
like the plot is like we got to get back to the ship. That's the plot. That's literally it. It's about the characters and more importantly, it's about the world, right? It's about the ecosystem that's been created and imagined and it is visually stunning. Despite the fact that I don't love the animation style, it's still visually stunning and the creativity that went into the world building is just phenomenal.
Well, then you'll be pleased to hear that
Yeah.
Pantheon kind of. When I started the show, it reminded me of Scavenger's Reign, and that's kind of what hooked me. It's a different kind of like with Scavenger's Reign. I don't know. It pulled some sort of like childlike curiosity. Like I just wanted to see what other kind of alien things they had in the world. It was like one of the
Mhm.
few shows where I've seen where I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, this is what life could be like on another planet. Just completely, the ecology behind it is actually, I think, really well thought out, uh, and that really adds to the experience.
Yeah, they built in some actual uh like real ecosystems, I guess I would say, and real food chains, and where you can
Yeah.
see how this world is self-sustaining instead of just being like, oh, here's like one-off ideas about something that we thought would be cool, but we didn't really think about how they would interact with each other in the world. And so I really appreciate, yeah, that like there was so much thought that went into how do we make this all feel like it came out of the same, biome.
But it doesn't feel totally alien. It definitely still feels like humans creating something alien, you know? Like everything on this planet still, to use Aaron's expression, is still kind of Earth adjacent, you know? It's not too whack. Some of it is. Some of the mind control stuff and some of the other like subset ecosystems are pretty weird. But on a whole, it's still Earth adjacent, right? As far as the ecology is concerned.
Yeah, it feels like most of the creatures are inspired by uh, evolution, and so like
Hmm.
how we have all these explanations for why animals here do things. I feel like you could come up with explanations for the same things in the show, like yeah, how they interact with each other, specific niches that they all fill, all that kind of stuff.
I appreciate though that like yes, while it does feel inspired by what we see and recognize obviously by living on Earth, that they didn't go I liked that they still there was enough uniqueness to it, because I feel like sometimes things that are supposed to take place in either on a different planet or just in some kind of alternate reality or something, where they have to create a whole new, ecosystem, new animals, all of different types of plants, all of that, where it just feels like a little too copy and paste from Earth, and like where everything basically interacts the same way. It just looks different, and it doesn't have anything that's truly unique about it. Because I feel like something that I found myself appreciating while I was watching that show was that it was like, yeah, it doesn't have to play by the same rules that we would expect something to play by on Earth, because if it exists somewhere else and, it came from a totally different source, has a different atmosphere, obviously has to interact with different kinds of other, plant and animal life, and it's not necessarily going to be something that we can necessarily look at and be like, yes, I recognize this as something I've also seen on Earth. And I think that too much of sci-fi stuff, especially, I think about, things like Star Wars or whatever, where it just feels like almost like a one-to-one with Earth in a lot of ways, where they just put a different skin on it, and that's kind of it. So I appreciated that there was some stuff where it was like, oh no, this is actually pretty different from anything that we would actually be able to find you couldn't find a one-to-one on Earth, I guess. So I appreciated that.
Well, maybe I stole yours, Karina, but anything you've been watching recently that's worth noting?
Well, yeah, so I watched Scavenger's Reign, and I haven't started any other or been in the middle of any other new TV shows. I did just watch what is it called? It was a movie. I watched A Real Pain, and I enjoyed that. I don't know if either of you saw that.
I haven't heard of it.
It's just from this last year. It's a, I don't know, kind of a comedy, kind of a drama, I guess. It stars Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin, and it was good. Like, it's nothing overly ambitious. It's just about these two characters, and they're on a vacation in Europe together, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. I appreciated, the filmmaking, that it was just an enjoyable, it's just an independent film. Like, I think I want to say Eisenberg maybe wrote and directed it as well.
I was about
Yeah,
to
he's
bring
doing
that
a
up.
lot
yeah,
of that
it was really
these
good.
days.
Yeah. But it was good. I mean, I would recommend it.
Has Kieran Culkin been acting, like, over the past couple decades?
Why?
Isn't he the Home Alone kid?
No, yeah, that's his brother.
They
Oh,
look
really?
so
Yeah, they're
similar,
brothers.
he might as well be him.
Well, I'm looking at a 40-year-old version of him too here, so I'm kind of could be. Okay. I'm
No,
trying to think,
Macaulay
what have I-
Culkin is the one who was in Home Alone.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
And he married the girl from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Sure.
And they have a kid.
Oh, Fargo. That's where I've seen him. Fargo season 2. Okay. I thought I recognized him. That's where it is.
Kyrian?
Yeah. No.
What did you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. Kieran McCulkin.
Okay.
Kieran Culkin. What a name.
That's another show I
Jeez.
need to watch, right? Do you see how many siblings there are?
No.
There's like 8 Culkins. It's crazy.
Culkin Coven.
Locally or in that family?
I don't know. Google just says that there's one Macaulay Culkin, Rory Culkin, Dakota Culkin, Shane Culkin, Quinn Culkin, Christian Culkin, and Jennifer Adamson, who are all siblings of Kieran Culkin
Sure.
as a clan.
Yeah, that's quite a few.
Yeah, I would highly recommend Fargo as the side. The first 2
Yeah.
seasons are fantastic.
I saw, I think, most of the first season. That's the one with Martin Freeman, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the movie?
Yep. Yeah, the movie's fantastic. I love it.
Oh, it's lovely.
I'm a Coen Brothers diehard, so I haven't seen all their stuff,
Did they?
but I have loved almost everything I've seen of theirs.
That's them?
Yeah.
What
That's them.
the?
It's one of their earlier ones. Anyways, I'm Nate,
I'm Aaron.
I'm Karina.
and this podcast is limited to everything. Okay, so we have 3 episodes to talk about. What order are we doing this in? Should we do least interesting to most interesting?
Is that subjective?
I was about to say, like, this might turn into a fight.
I'm gonna say mine's the least interesting. So
All right, if you're willing to take that, sure, we can.
we're all
do
on
that.
board with that. Let's go ahead and start with
Is that
the
a
ground
train
giant.
pun?
What?
You said
A what?
we're all on board for that. On board. I don't know.
There are this. There,
Going through the tall
did
grass.
a train go by last time? Because there are trains that go by here actually.
What? Are you having a stroke?
No. Okay.
What?
No, like where we live, like there are actually trains that come by frequently, and like it's so close, I could probably, if the windows opened, I could almost like touch the train as it goes by. So
Oh dang! I used to live
Yeah.
in a house like that, and I miss it.
like if one
Um,
comes by, you'll hear it. I promise.
Okay. Well, that being
We'll have
said,
to take a break.
I haven't heard no trains from you.
Yeah, neither
Me
have I.
referencing that was the tall grass. It
Okay.
was all about
Yeah.
train.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Which is not what we're
I
talking
understand
about.
that.
So mediocre reference.
Wait, that's Karina's
Your
episode.
L.
Yeah, I know, but we're not talking about Karina's episodes. It was marginally more
Still a
interesting than mine.
mediocre reference.
Why didn't you guys pick something else then?
Well, so I didn't go back and watch the whole season before I picked. I kind of like skimmed through. I was half based off memory, half based off, skimming through some episodes. And I just thought that this drowned giant one was like the most, it seemed very, very odd, and just weird and interesting. And so I thought, you know what, screw it, I'll go for it. So the skinny of this one is essentially that just a giant man washes up on a beach somewhere in England, and that's pretty much it. What did you guys think of this?
So we are discussing this one first.
Yeah.
I kind of like the fact that, like most of Love, Death, and Robots is super action-packed or really, out of the box ideas. But with this, which it's out of the box, it's literally just about a dude washing up on shore, and humanity not really reacting. Like this must be a parallel universe, because if this happened in real life,
Right? No kidding.
shit would hit the fan. But so I kind of like that. It's really quiet and simple.
Yeah, I had so many thoughts while I was watching it of like, there's no way this is taking place in our timeline, because first of all, where's the government? You know that they'd be like, this belongs to us, and we're we are dealing with this. We're not just going to let people like run all over the place. And yeah, it raises all kinds of interesting questions about like, where did this dude come from? Are there more of him? Are they a threat? Like, why is nobody taking this seriously? So it's definitely not the world we live in.
Yeah, they react more like it's a beach whale than like it's a local attraction or something like that, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the largest ball of rubber bands or something, you know? It's like people want to climb on it, take pictures with it, but they get bored of it very quickly, right? Which
I almost feel like it's almost more like uh kind of going back to what Aaron said about like treating it like it's a beached whale. It's like they're interested at first. It's almost like they already knew it existed. Kind of like if a giant squid washed up on a beach, you'd be like, "Whoa, I want to go see it if I'm close by," because that doesn't happen very often, and like this is kind of maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity. But also, it doesn't warrant any kind of truly special attention outside of maybe some researchers because we already know they exist. It's not new. It's not threatening. It's just, oh, kind of go look at it, take some pictures, and then move on with your life. And so, yeah, the fact that there's no reaction of like people just spiraling into some kind of existential crisis about like, what the hell? We did not know these existed. Instead, they're just like, nah, cool. I climbed on it, took some selfies, graffitied my name, and I'm over it.
Okay, well now that I'm thinking about it, like if this were to happen in real life, in our reality, how long do you think it would take before people went on to the next thing? Because we have such a short attention span. So maybe this isn't a parallel universe.
it's kind of what I'm wondering because like I think that's I'm wondering if that's kind of the point is that humans are so on to the next thing, right? Like we love to be fascinated by one thing today and bored of it tomorrow, right? So like the fact that it's an enormous human is irrelevant, right? It's taking something that is like out of the ordinary. If it was just a whale that washed up shore, you could use it as the exact same example and have the show be exactly the same, but it'd be super boring, right? Because it'd be a whale. So like in this case, we're taking a fantastical being in a sense, a giant human, and doing the exact same thing with that. But I think the purpose is more about the human psyche, the human mentality of just like, and then you have this one guy juxtaposed with all the crowds, this one guy who's obviously very poetic in nature that is just kind of fascinated by the
Yeah, he's a
you know,
romantic.
He loves
is,
to
you know,
listen to himself talk.
most romantics do.
Well, and I love the way that he describes it in his narration, where he's talking about how it recontextualizes like the Odyssey for him, where he's always thought of them as just being normal guys, and now he's like, oh, what if this was what our history was like? What if these were the people of these legends that we have? And like for him, it's this kind of this beautiful new perspective on our history or like what we are or the stories we tell. And then just for everybody else, yeah, it's just kind of this like photo op and then that's it.
Something kind of poignant also is when he kind of says that like to him the giant is more alive to him than a lot of the other people that he's around, you know, like he's like he can kind of idealize it in his head, whereas the ugliness of humanity is always present. Like when he says that, there's like a person that walks by and like kind of like tosses a cup, like a piece of trash on the ground or whatever, right? And so it's kind of like him maybe idealizing this perfect human that's washed up shore, you know, like perfect bodily dimensions and everything, with just the ugliness of like actual human reality.
Dude would be fun at parties, I tell you what. I get it, you read books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the notes I made to myself about it was just that there's clearly, at least at the beginning, everybody is fascinated by it, but there's no respect for the body. Like very quickly, as soon as it only takes one person kind of breaching that, like, you know, that one scientist climbs up on top of him and then it's over. Like everybody's like, oh, we can climb on it.
It's allowed?
We can dance on it. We can do graffiti. People just start removing pieces just because they want to. Like, it's like no respect for, because it's like I think if you put this on a smaller scale, like literally a smaller scale, like if it was just an average sized human being, like somebody found a body on the beach, people wouldn't like cut pieces off and take it home and be like,
well, it'd be a crime
I'm gonna
scene
keep
instantly.
this-" Well, I know, but I'm saying like even that aside, like I don't think I don't think it would be the reaction of the public to be like, yeah, I'm going to collect a piece and take it home. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to use it as advertisement for my store or something, like that bone above the butcher shop. And it's like, but then as soon as it's on this scale and it's not a person that anybody knows, that's, it's like, oh, well, we're enough, there's enough degrees between us and him that we don't feel bad desecrating this body.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like it's a metaphor for something. I don't know, like, yeah, a beach whale, how, like Karina said, we just have no respect for nature.
Oh, something so. I guess the people's reactions to it being so inhuman is kind of repulsive, right? People climbing on it to begin with is already like just kind of like wigs me out a little bit because it's just kind of macabre.
We get it. You read books. Macabre.
But furthermore, I love the part where there's this dude chilling on the beach with his trailer. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but he's literally like boiling parts of this guy's body. Presumably,
Oh, I did not.
I'm not sure.
Whoa.
What?
You didn't catch
this?
Well, I saw the dude in the trailer, obviously, but like,
it's
what
about
made you
the
think he was
9.
eating parts of the
If
giant?
you go back, it's about the 8:50-minute mark of the episode, and it's absolutely, it's not explicitly stated, but it's very heavily implied, I think, which is, I don't know, just insult to injury for this old.
Well, okay,
old
let's
chap.
say he is boiling parts of this dude. Why would he why do you think he was eating it, or why do you think it was for consumption? That seems like a leap.
Just go back. I mean, go back and look at it. That's all I'm saying.
I think your idea says more about you than anything else.
My interpretation.
Yeah, you are projecting here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hella cannibalistic.
I like when he goes there like a couple weeks later and nobody's there, and he sees the chick like sitting in the guy's earlobe.
Yeah.
I want a chair like that. Look really comfortable.
Also, quite possibly the most metal thing you could have in life would be an absolutely enormous skull next to your barn with a tarp over it.
With a tarp.
Yeah, that's facts.
Not covering it completely.
Yeah, a casual tarp. You're right.
Yeah. I did like, though, that at the very end, the shot of like the rib cage still partly being on the beach, and that it's just there. I don't know, like I don't know if there's necessarily any additional special meaning to that or anything, but just as a visual it was kind of interesting and beautiful but sad, and I don't know. I liked ending on that note of it just, he was never even fully like removed from the beach or had anything done with his entire body. Like literally they just let kind of the torso rot away, and now there's just these few remaining bones sticking out of the sand. I don't know. I liked that as a, I don't know, I guess kind of a poignant image to end the episode on.
I just remember the exhibit, like the circus
penis
exhibit or whatever. I didn't say that. You said it.
It's a word.
But yeah, it is a word. I just think you're projecting again.
I don't even know what that means.
Me neither, to be frank.
All right. Anyways, so that's the drowned giant for those of you following along at home. Up next, Karina.
Yeah. I agree. Mine probably does have to come second. I don't think mine tops Aaron's in interest. Yeah, so The Tall Grass was the episode I chose. And the episode, not real plot heavy, just there's a guy on a train, and the train breaks down in the middle of this just kind of in the plains. There's nothing around. He gets off for a smoke. There's all these lights that he's seeing in the grass, so he wanders out into it, and then ends up finding out that each one of those lights is like a zombie thing crawling out of the ground, and he almost doesn't make it back, and then the conductor saves him, and they jump back on the train right as it's leaving, and he's like, what was that? And the guy's just like, nah, we're not really sure, but the train breaks down here periodically, and we think they maybe used to be humans, but don't talk to people about this because no one will believe you anyway. And that's the episode. So I don't know. I liked it. I guess to me it kind of felt like obviously it doesn't really have like a strong sci-fi, or to me it doesn't even really have a strong otherworldly feel to it, honestly. This episode kind of made me think of like just folklore in a lot of ways, and the stories that you get from different regions of the country, and just kind of the way that those stories develop and become part of a culture or a group of people in an area. And that's kind of what it felt like to me. It actually made me think like in some ways of like, even though this is clearly like in a different part of the country, like it kind of felt like probably the Midwest, kind of a Midwestern Gothic feel to it. But it made me think of like Appalachian stories tend to be kind of creepy and dark and weird. So I don't know. I guess that was the appeal to me, was that it felt, not like anything too insane, just kind of an interesting, like, yeah, you could see this being like a genuine story that people told or passed down or something like that as well. So that was kind of my take on it.
Well, it feels like American mythology, right? Which is kind of something we don't have. But that's kind of the vibe I get from it. Like, this is like one of the darker aspects of it. But it kind of reminds me of like the Neil Gaiman book, American Gods, which is about like, it's been a while since I've read it, but I think it's kind of like about the Native Americans, or the gods that like Native Americans worshipped, and like how their pantheon is kind of just as real, quote unquote, as like the Greek or the Roman one. And so it's about them interacting with humans kind of, but they're the forgotten ones kind of in a way. And so to me, it falls in line with that, because it obviously is like in, Kansas or something. And so to me, it seems like another part of that mythology.
Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty fair, yeah, maybe more so even than folklore, with it being like part of a mythology of, yeah, because I mean, like, I think the conductor makes a comment even that he's kind of speculating on what they are, and he's like, maybe they were people who just didn't survive, like kind of essentially like the Oregon Trail,
right?
Or,
yeah,
who tried to make a life for themselves out here, and just something happened, and then now they're no more, and they're just forgotten, but they were human once.
One line that's kind of a little bit, part of me wants to try and find a metaphor in this. I'm not going to try too hard, because I don't really think that's what they're trying to do here with this. But the conductor has one line towards the end in that area you're talking about, where he says, like maybe they died crossing the plains, or maybe they just got off the train at the wrong place, which feels like a double entendre in some way.
Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, I agree. I think like the other American mythology is an interesting point. Because there's definitely, I know that every time I've come across stories that are from, Native American cultures and their mythologies, their stories, they're always really interesting. And it is, I guess, kind of sad how much of that has been erased or forgotten, that it didn't get treated with the same kind of reverence or even scholastic interest that things like the Greek and Roman pantheons got, or I mean, even to some extent, like Europe, other parts of Europe, like the Vikings and stuff, even their mythologies and their cultures got preserved a lot better. And then for some reason, I don't know if it's just because like so many of our ancestors were just so intent on settling places and making them part of the US, that they weren't really interested in preserving it or what happened. But I do think it's unfortunate because there are a lot of interesting and like kind of compelling myths and stories in those cultures.
Well, yeah, I don't think we just didn't preserve it. We like actively suppressed it and uh attempted to purge it completely. Like there's so many stories of Native Americans who, had to go to, English schools and they weren't allowed to worship their gods and, just the amount of oppression and I don't know the word isn't segregation, but it's somewhere along those lines. Yeah, we actively tried to get rid of their culture and, uh, get them to be white, I guess. Christian.
I'd say we kind of starved their culture. If you think about reservations and stuff, it's like, yeah, you guys can keep your way of life, you can keep everything that's important to you. Here's the area you can do that, so just stay there, and you can do it there, right? So it's like, let's sequester you off, and then you can live your life just like nothing's changed, right? And that's not at all what life
Yeah.
was about for them,
Oh,
right?
and by the way, we're going to, I know we promised this, but we're going to, move you over here now, and then move you over here now, and,
And now your space is
continue to
smaller,
shrink.
and
Yeah. We originally promised like Oklahoma or something like that to a bunch of tribes, and as far as I know, Oklahoma's not just one big old reservation.
Isn't that what the Trail of Tears was, if I'm remembering correctly?
Uh, I don't know enough
That
to.
wasn't in Oklahoma, but
Yeah.
It was some sort of like forced migration, which I guess Trail of Tears it's kind of obvious, but
yeah, we just we don't talk about this kind of stuff anymore these days. It's just kind of
we did something bigger than the Holocaust. Like we did a Holocaust.
essential. Like in a way, it was a bit more. In some ways, it was a bit more passive, but it was very much inhumane. All the same, consistently inhumane. And
Yeah, I don't think like with the Holocaust, like they just hated Jews and wanted to purge them or whatever. And I think there's a really interesting idea of like we don't think of Genghis Khan as we don't hold him the same light as Hitler, even though he killed 10% of the population of the Earth at that time. And why is that? And I think the reason why it's not just the fact that Hitler was only like 100 years ago. It's also the fact that for Genghis Khan, it was just part of, that's what you did back then. It wasn't like he was searching out and he was racist or something like that. It was, you conquered. That's what you did. Whereas with Hitler, it was born from a place of hate. That's why he murdered so many people. And the same thing with this. I don't think that, while we did see them as subhuman compared to us whiteys, I think the degradation of their culture and the erasure of it all just happened because of the machine, the manifest destiny.
yeah, it's just kind of indifference. It's, yeah, like you said, it's not, for most people, I mean, I'm sure there were people who were incredibly racist towards them, but there were probably just the vast majority were just indifferent. They were like, nah, well, I mean, we want to expand, so we're just going to do this. And like, we don't have anything particular against them. They're in the way. So
And it's like,
we need to,
listen, there's room for all of us here, so just, scoot over, kind of, right? Which,
yeah, just go over there.
there's a way to do that. There's a way, like, there's a right way to approach that.
Keep on going.
Probably not. What?
I said keep on going.
Well, like, I mean,
feel
not
like
with
you're digging yourself a
smallpox
hole.
blankets, but
There's a right way
Um,
to like move everybody and expand and
there's a right way to
Nate does
share,
make an
Aaron,
argument
is
for
what I'm
like,
saying.
no. Here's how colonialism can be done ethically.
yeah.
There's a right, like, there are right ways to meet new people and share. Like there's a right way to go 300, 400 years ago. There's a right way to go to a new place and live in that place with the people that are there.
There's a right way
Right.
to break into someone's house and squat in it.
See, but then that's kind of like, I feel like that's a logical fallacy, isn't it?
No,
Yeah,
that's yeah,
like,
no, I completely agree that like we are a really privileged people, and most of human history has been, just absolute, savagery, and to hold the people of the past to our current standards is just ridiculous. But at the same time, like, yeah, I like what happened was wrong. I mean, but that's
like there's
that's what's kind of nice about today is that we can look back on that. Like, that's how nice we have it now, that we can look back on that and be like, that shouldn't have happened. But
yeah, but it still happens.
exactly,
That's the thing. It hasn't.
yeah,
Like, it
it
still
doesn't
happens.
just
Well, right.
happen.
I
It
mean, like,
still is happening. Yeah,
yeah, and it's not to come in and be like, oh, we have to rewrite history and like pretend that this didn't, or try to like, and I think it's kind of a lost cause trying to rectify that stuff now, because at this point it's like you're not gonna get the United States as a whole to collectively agree that like, yeah, we should give this back to these groups of people and just like make our country a fraction of the size that it will. Like obviously like that's not going to happen at this point in time. But I think, yeah, being able to look back on it and be like, you know what, in retrospect, yeah, should that have happened? Probably not. Or like if they were genuinely interested in expanding it needed to be handled with civility of like, can we buy it from you? Can we trade for it? Instead of just being like, you know what, we got here and we have the means to take it from you, so we're going to. Regardless of how you feel about it, or whether or not we have any like right to be here. We just want to take it. And like, but unfortunately, like that's a decent chunk of human history is like, you can go back and look at any culture. I mean, white people doing it to white people, African people doing it to African people, Asian people doing it to Asian people. Like, it's everywhere.
Well,
It's unfortunate. And
to tie this into Aaron's point earlier, which is like, well, then why don't we give Genghis Khan shit about it? It's like, well, part of it is that it was a long time ago, and life was just different. It was like, yeah, you went around and you conquered people, because if you didn't conquer them, they might conquer you, right? So it was a very dog eat dog world, right? And so since then, we've slowly progressed, slowly civilized more, slowly had more of a whole earth, like a view of all different peoples and cultures and whatsoever. But even still, 400 years ago, we did not have a perfect idea of that yet, and which is why the Spanish and the English and everybody rolled into the new world, quote unquote, and was like, oh, we have like significantly more advanced technology than everyone here, so I guess we just take it.
you don't
right?
even have to go back that far. You can go back to the scramble for Africa.
So, but my
I mean,
point
that
is
was
that
like,
it's slowly, hopefully, idealistically, we're slowly up, maybe even like with an altruistic mindset. Hopefully, we're slowly getting closer to not acting like that, But it's like pick any territory, pick any land, pick any portion of land. Whoever's living there has not always lived there. Somebody took it from somebody conquered it from someone. Even within the United States, what is now the United States, all the Native American tribes were, always at war, conquering each other, fighting each other, whatever, So it's like, at a certain point, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. My ancestors a few hundred years ago were dicks to yours, but it's like, what can we do about it now except not continue to be
try to
dicks
be
to
better
each other?
moving forward.
Yeah,
Yeah, break the cycle.
exactly.
which we're definitely not keen on doing because I mean, like, the amount of injustices that go on, like anything, like if you just take a look around your house, just everything around you is made by uh people who were paid so little that they might as well be slaves, or work in conditions that are so abhorrent that they might as well be slaves. Like everything in your cell phone, your TV, any sort of computer, any sort of raw resource like metal, like
Right. So, like, the mindset has to shift now because obviously, like, we're not as a culture collected, like, most parts of the world are not out actively trying to conquer other cultures and other countries anymore. Like, that's, I mean, there's still a few, but for the most part, like, most countries are not interested in like creating an empire where they control all of these other, where they want to subjugate people in that way. But yeah, I think it becomes then changing your mindset of like, all right, so maybe there's not like wars or conflicts over land so much anymore in the sense of wanting to make it your own. I mean, maybe to some extent where there's resources, but it is a lot more about like the products that we purchase and where the labor comes from, like you said. So it's like, yeah, viewing that as that's kind of where things have shifted to now, where so maybe we're not, conquering a people and trying to assimilate them, but there are still groups of people and parts of the world that get treated as less than, and it's okay. Everybody makes it okay in their mind that like, oh yeah, it's fine if they get paid, pennies to do 40 hours, 50 hours of work in a couple of days. Like, it's shifting that to see that that's maybe where the issue is now, more so than going out and actively conquering in the same way that our ancestors did.
Yeah, I do roll my eyes anytime anybody talks about any sort of injustice that's going on, because I'm like, you post it out on Facebook with the product that, at all points of its manufacturing process involved, essentially human slaves. And so, like, yeah, just because you can't see it, and I think that, more than ever, everybody knows that, I mean, we're like the capital from, I hate this metaphor, but we're like the capital from the Hunger Games. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you guys have seen or read the books, but yeah, we live a very opulent lifestyle to the detriment of others, and we rely on them having a bad lifestyle in order to use our creature comforts.
Potentially, there's a exponential effect as well, right? Where it's like there's certain nations or certain countries that start to fall behind over the course of history, and that just gets worse and worse. The rich get richer, right? The technologically advanced become more technologically advanced, right? Whereas the others fall behind more and more and more. So the separation becomes greater and greater.
Which makes it all the grosser when we buy stuff from them and, treat their labor as if it's, worth pennies a day. That's probably hyperbole, but worth practically nothing compared to the way we pay our people, which is still garbage. But yeah, just the fact that we consider ourselves so conscious and civilized when, in fact, all this gross stuff is happening around the world, and we have, I don't know about the ability to make everything equal. I don't think that's, a good thing to try to do. I don't even think it's possible, but I think I don't know. I'm not, an expert in this. I just think that we could be doing things better, of course. Hot take.
It's like you have to it's that idea of like we have to wean ourselves off of, because it is so easy to just be like, oh, I'll buy something cheap, because it's convenient, because it's easy, because I don't want to spend a bunch of money to buy something that was made ethically and with, high quality materials, and, where, blah, 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 like all the boxes are checked where you wouldn't have to feel bad about it. Like, it's so much easier to be like, yeah, you know what, I'll just order the cheap, like, made in China stuff off Amazon and not think about it. And you have to get to, I guess it would be having to get your society to a point where they're like, no, I want to reject that, and I want to make a conscious decision to seek out products that are made by people who were actually fairly compensated and had humane working conditions and, all of these other things. And then eventually, if you could get society to the majority of people to move that direction, you could eliminate a lot of that because then there would be no market for it. But I mean, yeah, anything that involves, a collective, group of people having to arrive at the same conclusion or willingness to make that change and being like, yeah, I am willing to spend 3 times as much on a product because I know it wasn't made by a slave. Like, I think there's still a long road there if it's even possible at all.
The true unfortunate situation is that you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, because if you decide henceforth to only ever, to like basically, it's an A word. I'm fighting for it. Abort, abolish. What's the word? Like,
What?
not ban, but like
Boycott?
Abolish.
Boycott.
sounds-
I think boycott is what I'm going for.
That does not start with an A, but nice try.
There's an A. No, there's not. Anyways,
No, there's not.
Spectrum adjacent.
I read.
I want Aaron to retract a statement that you read books.
Hey, remember when I name dropped Neil Gaiman? Anyways,
And then couldn't remember anything about the book.
it was years ago. My point is, what's my point? Okay, if you boycott all these unethical manufacturing processes, the damned if you don't part of this is that everyone involved in that is shit out of luck then, right? It's like, well, yeah, it's borderline slave labor, but like if you take that labor away, then what do those people do? They just go off and die,
I don't think
it's
we'd
like,
have to take labor away. I think we would just pay them more.
well, who's we? Like my point is that like us as Americans buying random cheap crap off of Amazon constantly, which apparently Americans love to do, that like the point is you kind of have to starve out the manufacturing companies in China and Vietnam and in wherever else, right? But the byproduct of that is all the people that are working in that and rely on and depend on what meager, money they're getting from it. They still depend on it. And so if you starve that out, then they lose that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, maybe, but like Aaron said, or you just force those companies to have to, if they want to stay in business, and if they're like, hey, we make whatever, Nike shoes, if Nike wants to keep making shoes, then they need to, like, if they want to stay in business, it's like, not that they have to close down all of their manufacturing and be like, all right, I guess we just don't exist anymore because people refuse to buy our product. It's like, no, people just want you to be better. Like, pay your workers, better, give them better living or like better working conditions and give them a living wage. So not that those people necessarily would have to be out of a job. It's just that hopefully you would force the company to have to do better because people will refuse to buy from them as long as they know that they are mistreating the people who are working for them and actually making the product.
Which unfortunately, I think the only way around that is to charge more for the product itself, which would dilute how much
that's what
we
I was
make.
saying. That's what makes it hard because a lot of people are unwilling to do that because they're like, oh, if I buy a product that I know wasn't made by a slave or somebody in terrible working conditions, yeah, you're going to pay 3 or 4 times probably the price, which, I mean, there is an issue there too with things like Nike where it's like, it actually costs them almost nothing to manufacture most of their products. They have an insane markup on their products. So it's actually just that you'd have to force the people at the top into being willing to take less money, which again, that's why I'm saying, like, I mean, there's a lot of components, which, I mean, I don't know that you could solve it, but like, I think that's the only way you could ever get to that point would be like such a universal boycott that if they wanted to stay in business at all, they'd have to make drastic changes. And I mean, I don't know if that would ever happen because getting that many people on the same page is hard. But I think that's probably the only way you can do it without like an actual government, I guess, stepping in and forcing them to. But also that's not going to happen. And isn't probably the right solution anyway.
The problem runs much deeper too, which is consumerism. Like the consumeristic mindset is actually the root of the issue. Like if people didn't want so much crap constantly and always need to upgrade what they have and get something new, then we wouldn't really be in this situation to begin with. So that's the real issue, I think.
I think we're too advanced of a society for how our human brains work. Like for the longest time, we used to live in villages and maybe a city of like 10,000 people or whatever. But now with everything that we have, like I just don't think that we are equipped to like I don't think our empathy is evolved enough to deal with this kind of thing. Like if I don't see it, it doesn't exist.
Well, you just
If
have
that kind of
to.
makes sense.
It comes down to discipline. It's like, okay, once you've realized some of the issues that are like present in your life and that you're contributing towards, even if it's somewhat passively, it comes down to discipline. It's like, okay, well, I have to make a conscious decision not to engage, or to do my best at the very least, not to engage in things that are feeding these ugly systems.
Absolutely, but I think unfortunately it's more than that because if you go back and look too at, you don't have to even go back like hundreds or thousands of years. If you go back, 40 or 50 years and look at the way that even like living in the United States used to look compared to now, there's been an intentional shift by companies that manufacture products, whether that's cars or tech or our clothes, where they recognize that, hey, we could make more money if people needed to replace this more often,
Planned
which is why
obsolescence.
things don't last anymore. And it's like, so they intentionally build in these like I guess I don't know if you would call it a flaw, but they're basically things are not designed to last. They are not designed to be high quality. The vast majority of products that are at least marketed to like the middle class, they're not designed for that because what they want is they want you to have to replace your phone every 2 years. They want you to have to buy a car every 5 years. They want you to have to replace your shoes multiple times a year. They don't want you to keep something forever because they make less money. If you can buy a car and it will not have any issues and it will run flawlessly for 50 or 60 years, then that's not good for them because then people, you're not selling very many cars then. So it's far more, more advantageous for them as a business to make their car start to fall apart and have issues after 10 years so that you feel inclined to buy a new one. And so I think at this point, unfortunately, like even if you have the discipline to recognize that you don't want to be a part of that system, it's still really hard to get out of without like, becoming entirely self-sufficient in some ways because even if you don't want to be a part of the system, all of the products you buy, whether it's your kitchen utensils or your car or your clothes or your phone, it's all still being manufactured by these people that are really more interested in making money off you than they are in anything else,
Yeah,
and so
but
they're absolutely willing to continue that. And so then it becomes even harder because then you really have to kind of go to the fringes of what's being produced to find something that is actually going to last you a lifetime or last
you
you a long time and not need to be replaced all the time.
you also don't have to buy everything new.
But even if you thrift or you're willing to buy something secondhand, there's just less and less of that available because obviously the further away we get from whenever that happened, that change happened where companies started manufacturing products to have short lifespans, then the less and less there is out there that you could even buy secondhand. Partly because people hold on to stuff if it's really good, but partly just because there's less of it, compared to the number of people and the number of potential buyers there are. So even if you are willing to go secondhand and not buy something new or to only make a purchase when you absolutely need to and not just because you want to, it's still really difficult.
I don't know how we could deal with the inequality that is in the world. Um, like whether it's conscious conscious capitalism or some form of socialism. All I know is that there's a saying, communism only works on paper, and I think the same applies for capitalism. It really only works on paper if you want to be ethical. Like people really don't vote for their dollar, vote with their dollar. They buy the cheapest stuff possible because you kind of have to if you know want to have stuff.
Yeah. And it's all, I mean, like, I think what makes it so hard is it's such a, like a clusterfuck of so many different things because there's so many components to it as well. It's like, because I think about, like, I think a lot of what drives people wanting to buy cheap goods too is because we've built into our society this, like, you got to keep up with the influencers you see on TikTok and the celebrities. And so it's like, well, how do you keep up? You just have the illusion of it. Like, yeah, you can't afford to buy designer, you can't afford to buy luxury items, but you can look like you do. And so look, here's all these cheap dupes that will make you look like you've got it together. And it's like this, it just feeds this like insatiability of, we gotta keep up, we gotta look like we're doing better than we are, we gotta look like we're more successful, more put together. And it's like, even though that definitely would not solve the problem in and of itself, there's a part of me that wonders, like, if you removed that and, like, you got rid of celebrity culture, influencer culture, like, how good that would be for our society. Like, yes, it's definitely not going to fix all of the problems, but just to remove that weight from people where there's no longer this comparison game going on all the time, and people could just live their lives, and people could just be like, hey, I'm just going to worry about, like, what makes me happy, what makes me comfortable, what's good for me and my family, my immediate community, the people I genuinely care about, instead of looking good on social media. Like, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, if we didn't have all that stuff, it would, I would think, be a net positive for the world. Um, I just think that we need, uh, everybody just needs to eat some damn mushrooms or something. Like, we need a better form of consciousness. We're not, uh, our system of empathy is not meant for, yeah, the world that we live in. It wasn't even really meant for the world that, we had just, a few hundred years ago where, wherever you were born, you would die within, 20 miles of that place. You never left. You knew everybody, Dunbar's number and all that. You can only remember like 140
Uh,
names.
yeah, so yeah, that sounds. I don't. Yeah, I think part. I mean, the big issue is a lot of our, like, you're talking about empathy. Like, a lot of it is just a facade anyway, because we know that, again, like, it's all about keeping up appearances, and there's not an actual empathy or a desire to understand other people's situations or conditions. We just want to look like we do because it makes us look like a good person, and it makes us feel good in the moment to be like, oh yeah, I care about this, and oh, it's so sad, or like, let me do some activism. But it doesn't solve anything, because it's, for most people, I don't want to say for everybody, but, like, for most people, it really is just, it's a facade, it's a veneer. Like, it's behind closed doors. I don't think that's how they actually think or act.
Definitely not, or the world would be a different place.
I don't know if we're gonna get a good seamless transition to our next episode. Aaron had to dip for a second, but he's back now. So I guess we'll do Pop Squad.
Well, I mean, I don't even know how necessary that was because Karina and I kept on talking about the topic. I think I was gone for about 30 seconds, so you probably just had to cut a little bit, and now you just made things really weird. But a good oversteer there. Pop Squad it's a story about a world where people figured out how to make humans immortal. You can live forever, essentially. I don't know if there is an actual lifespan. I think they talk about living forever. Um, I think the only example I saw of like a specific age is the lady at the end says that she's 218 years old. So I don't know if that's a baby in their society or, the median lifespan, whatever. But because everybody can live for so long, they have a group of dudes called, or like a department uh, called the Pop Squad, where they just go around killing people who procreate. They call them like breeders or something like that. So I guess in this society, because of the fact that everybody lives for so long, to control, I assume, overpopulation, they have to kill both the people who procreate and their children. Um, which, I mean, it would be cool. Not cool. I wish I could say that this was, is a sci-fi idea, but I mean, not we, but people have literally done this. I mean, China's one-child policy and whatnot. But the reason why I picked this one is because I don't know, of the list of episodes, it I like the concept the most. Uh, I would definitely read a book, if the story was about this or something like that. I just like the idea.
It's very Blade Runner-y, right? That was my
Yeah.
first thought. The world period looks looks like it's a Blade Runner world, but then the concept is actually remarkably similar in a way as well, where you have this not socioeconomic, but like this cultural divide between us and them. You have the breeders, and then you have the civilized people, right? So, but I like the idea of it because it's something that, while yes, obviously very science fiction-y, and this is a very science fiction take on it, it's something that has been that is a real world issue and has been in the past, right? Like people are talking about overpopulation a lot. And obviously, we're not in a situation where we can live forever. We don't know how far away science is from like significantly prolonging human lifespan, but we're definitely not there yet. But people, there's obviously been an impact of this mindset that the world's becoming overpopulated because the majority of first world countries are not reproducing at sustainable rates anymore. So, like, this is a deep set idea.
Well, so I know for a while people were concerned about overpopulation, but I don't think that that's much of an issue anymore because of the fact that, yeah, first world countries uh, have so much baggage.
So, like, can we like take this as a lesson then, as to not listen to people? Period. It's like
I like that
everyone's like
idea.
freaking out about overpopulation and like, oh, we gotta stop, think about the future, think about blah blah blah. Oh shit! Everyone, listen to us.
That idea was born in like the 1920s or 30, like that. Oh, somewhere between like the 1920s and the 60s, where we noticed, the exponential growth of the human population as, babies stopped dying and people were still popping out 8 kids at a time. Um, yeah, we saw that. We were like, this cannot continue because other, countries are starting to become, I want to use the term more civilized, more advanced. They can actually take care of their children and they won't die. Yeah, so that whole idea was, literally from a century ago, and yeah, it it might have made sense back then. To think that way when you just look at the data, look at the big, steep incline of the population line. But yeah, now we don't have that issue, I guess, because we're just not making any more babies, which is a bit of a freaky scenario because why is that the case?
Well, I think definitely something that like those older, like you talked about, people the 20s, 30s, 40s looking at this and being like, we have concerns about how the exponential growth of the human population is that what it didn't factor in were like, I think a couple of things. One being just economic factors. Like it is not economical for most people to have a bunch of children. Like even if they want a big family, I mean, definitely in today's economy, like affording multiple children is a really, it's a very like, it's a huge financial burden. And so a lot of people just stopped having lots of kids for that reason because they're very expensive. But also, I think also didn't factor in the fact that like it was going to become a lot more common for women to go into the workforce and have like full careers and want to do that with their life and not just to be like stay at home moms and have that be like
Contraception.
their full time. Well, and contraception, yeah. Like just a variety of things that I don't think it factored in. That it's like, well, when you put all of those together, it's like now you have that most people only have, if they have kids at all, only have like one or two. And it is kind of like a combination of all those things. But it's like, I mean, if you're looking at it 100 years ago, like you don't even, recognize probably that a lot of those things are going to come into play. And so you're not thinking about that. You just start pushing for this, like, oh, we need to slow down. We need to slow down. And then now we've kind of slowed down too much. And it's like, maybe people should have some kids.
And why is that? So that they can go into the workforce and make money.
Well, and so that our country, our society doesn't fall apart.
We need more people to conquer. Keep reproducing.
I did also think that there was kind of an element too, as I was just thinking about like the group of people that are, in living forever, and it made me think of kind of two different things. One, that it was a little bit like the live forever people kind of had a little bit of a vampiric quality to them. I was thinking like you get this immortality, but obviously it comes at a steep cost. Like it's cost you your humanity basically, to live forever. You're not really, like, you might still technically be human, like biologically, but it's definitely cost you like your soul in a lot of ways, where you're like, yeah, it's totally fine to just like go out and murder children for existing, because it doesn't, we don't have room for them, or, to have it like just there's this cold, distant, removed, like where they don't even recognize that. So I don't know, like that was kind of something that stuck out to me when I was, I don't know, maybe stuck out, but just something that it made me think of was that it's just like, yeah, you've achieved this monumental thing of you can live forever and be young, or, kind of maintain your youth forever, but it's costing you the parts of yourself that are so much more valuable. And then I think you kind of see that reflected a little bit in the mom that he talks to, where she's like recognizing that she actually doesn't care about living forever. She would rather like be more human and have experiences and have things she can cherish because they are fleeting.
Yeah, I really like that mentality that like you hold something valuable because you know that it doesn't last in a way. If you know that something's going to last forever, then it's no longer like you take it for granted, right?
Well,
whereas if you have kids and you know that they're going to grow up and that you know that you're going to die, then you everything is special. Every moment is special. Every milestone is special.
Well, you hear it a little bit too when the cop guy's talking to his girlfriend, where he's like, if we weren't going to live forever, I'd marry you. And it's like, it's that same kind of like, it's not as deep or as probably emotional as like the mom talking about how much she values this time with her child, but it's that same idea of like, why do anything permanent? Why do anything that really matters? Because you have forever. So nothing has value anymore other than, I guess, maintaining that immortality.
Would you guys do it?
I might do one injection.
Yeah,
I'll
right?
take another
Like,
100 years.
what-
200 would be cool, but like I don't want to
No.
live
That
more
you
200
know of.
years.
Because like you ask any person who's on their deathbed, like, hey, if you could have another 50 years of being healthy and you have the body of a 30-year-old or whatever, would you do it? I don't think there's a person, especially when you're facing death, that would not take that that road. And so let's say you expand your life by 100 years. What about when that expiration date comes up and that question comes up again? Like, how many people would just keep on going?
I think that this is something that gets explored a lot of times, where you have a race or a technology that essentially has immortality, or it has incredibly long life, which is that essentially, I guess the theory is that the human psyche no longer wants it anymore. Like at a certain point, you are so, I don't know, like you just can't take living anymore. It depends on the world in which that exists, right? So like if you take a fantasy world like Lord of the Rings or something, where you have elves that live much longer, it's like, well, then if you surround yourself by anyone other than elves, then people are just going to be living and dying within your very long lifespan, and eventually it's just depressing, right? in this sense, it's a bit different because it's like, well, everyone has this technology at the ready, so everyone can just continue to live. She literally says forever. Like everyone can just continue to live forever. But it's like, at a certain point, do you even want to do that anymore? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and I would say like what happens though when you like get to the point where you've visited everywhere, you've explored everything, you've had maybe a long relationship with somebody that you love. eh, When you run out of like there to be, because I think it's easier probably for people, uh, in the real human situation where we can't live forever, to be like, oh yeah, I would want more time, I would want to live for a long time, because they could think of all the things they haven't done yet, they think of all the things that they never got an opportunity to do, or just even if you aren't super old yet, just like, like any normal person can just look at life and be like, yeah, I know I'll never get a chance to do everything I want to do, to go everywhere I want to go, just because that's not how it works, and like I don't have that kind of time or the resources. And so you want more time because you think of all the things that you know are going to go unfinished or unexplored. But if you have, you don't even have to go like 200 years, but if you go, like if you've lived 1,000 years and you've had plenty of time to do all of the things that you would want to do, maybe even things you weren't super interested in doing, but you just did them because they were something else that was unexplored. I could see it getting to a point where you're like, what is there left for me to do at this point? Unless the human brain fundamentally changed. I think that if you assume a brain like anybody has in a normal, mortal human body, yeah, you probably would get to a point where you'd be like, this is just exhausting. I just have to keep doing the same stuff now forever. And is there still joy in it? Is there still things because I think, again, so much of our enjoyment of things comes from knowing that we can't do them forever. Even if it's not something that we're like thinking about dying necessarily, but just things that you're like, yeah, I know I won't be young forever. I won't have like a healthy, like a really healthy body that feels good forever. So I want to take advantage of the stuff I can do while I'm young and healthy that I know I won't be able to do when I'm 75 or 80. Like there's just so much enjoyment that comes from things being limited and having finite lines drawn for what you can experience and when and how, and if you have the same brain and the same way of thinking about those things, but you suddenly have unlimited time, then yeah, I think you'd probably lose a lot of any of the enjoyment you could get out of those things at all.
Well, that's like, I think if you ask most people, if they want to live forever and never die, I don't think many people would say, yes to that. Whether they are on their deathbed or not. But the idea of, extending out our lifespan, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000, like yeah, there's still a, finite amount of time to do stuff, but you just have much more of it. Like I don't think anybody wants to be truly immortal. So I guess, where's the sweet spot?
I guess it's different for everybody.
Probably.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I also
What's sad is, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say I like one of the quotes that he has in this, which it's when he's talking with his girlfriend, like after she does her solo or something, and I like it. He says something like, we can't keep letting people into this party if nobody ever leaves, something like that, which felt like using the party as a microcosm for the planet as a whole, mm-hmm. Right?
Well, yeah, but I'm saying I think that part of it though goes back to the cost of them being immortal and getting to stay at the party forever, is that they have had to sacrifice what kind of makes you a human, and being willing to sacrifice other people basically to maintain your spot.
Like another thing she says is she's like, yeah, I just spent 20 years perfecting that solo. And it's like I could really see from an artist's perspective, like wanting more time, or a perfectionist maybe. But it's like I can see the appeal maybe from that, where it's like I can dedicate decades to this one very small thing and perfect it, and then I can move on to the next thing and dedicate decades or centuries to that. I don't know.
What's really sad though is so like for me, I've been living a pretty similar lifestyle for the last 10 or so years. Uh, a lot of the days kind of look the same, and I know for a fact that there's a lot of people who have the same, sort of thing going on, where there's not a lot of change from not just the day to day, but the year to year. And how many people, when given the chance of a longer, much longer life, would just do the literally what we're doing now, what some of us are doing now, where they're just not pursuing much. Uh, yeah,
Well, I
just
mean,
how sad that is, which it already is sad.
that's why a lot of people commit suicide too, right? Like they have no hope for a life worth living, right? Because maybe they're stuck in a cycle of monotony, or whatever the reason is, or they go the existential route and they start to question, why am I alive? What's even the purpose? Whatever. And so living longer is not going to solve that issue.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I think that's like the crux of being a human. Like, we just need purpose, or at least we need the illusion of purpose. Which, if you haven't had a longer lifespan, it would give you more time to find that purpose, which, probably doesn't actually, truly exist.
Yeah, probably to some
I
extent
mean, anybody who's ever
it's
done
whatever you
anything.
make it. Like, because obviously there are people that live pretty humble, uh, not exciting, not flashy lives that definitely feel a strong sense of purpose just because they choose to involve themselves in things that give them that sense of purpose. And then you have people that have everything they want at their fingertips that still struggle because, they haven't, maybe because they have too many opportunities or too much access, or just, anything in between, of people that just never connect to something, never really pursue something they're passionate about. And regardless of whatever the reasons are for people choosing to uh find get involved in something that gives them purpose or not, like, I do think it's very much individual. Like, there are going to be some people that can be incredibly content and feel that they lived a life they can be proud of, even though they never did anything monumental, at least that other people would consider monumental, but that they can be very content. And then people that even do things that other people look at and say, wow, that was impressive, that was, thank you for doing this thing, this was brave, this was bold, this was innovative, whatever, and that still feel like they don't maybe have purpose, or that they're still floundering. Like, I think it's so much of it is so individual.
Yeah, man, people are just, what a crazy species, and what a crazy time to be alive on this fucking rock.
It's what makes us different than animals, right? I mean, like having a consciousness and being introspective.
Like, my cat's never going to have an existential crisis.
Yeah, cats just live, breathe, and do what nature tells them to do, right? They react instinctually to everything, right? And
I mean, we do the
humans are
same
different.
thing, only we also can look in the mirror and see us, and we have a concept of time and that it's finite. Make it not so finite, and maybe we turn into a bunch of cats where, you know, your every day is a reaction instead of a proactive action,
Possibly, I guess.
which I think that's how most people live. I think we're much more reactive than we want to give ourselves credit for. Reactive is in
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you mean like on a small scale, like within situations, or do you mean as like a general pattern of how we
a
live our
general pattern.
lives?
I know that there's some outliers out there that actively pursue things, but I mean, at the end of the day, I think we're still just slightly smarter animals who are subject to our hormones and our biology, and yeah, like we like to think that we have long-term thinking, but that's only relative to, you know, other animals. We're still, reactive to our environment, to our stimuli.
Yeah, definitely. Like we're
Yeah.
definitely still animals. There's no question about that. We're just
We're just
we're
pretty
definitely
cool.
of a different caliber than any other species. There's no question
We
about
make
that.
cell phones and go to the moon.
We make cell phones and exploit the people that provide them.
Yeah, right.
Isn't it great being an advanced species?
Yep.
Love that
But it's
for
weird
us.
because like and on the one hand we don't like to you don't want to accept the fact that ignorance is bliss. But if you look at the simple just life of an animal, like they live every animal lives a perfect satisfactory life because they don't have consciousness, right? Like they live within the ecosystem, they do what they're supposed to do, and
Yeah, they don't know to want more or different.
yeah, like I like just the other day, I was walking around and there were a few puppies in a backyard. So I was like going over, letting them lick my hand, and one of them's blind, right? My first thought is like, oh, that's really sad. It's a blind puppy. And I was like, well, actually, it's not sad. Like it's kind of funny, like he's stumbling around and
Wait,
stuff,
whoa.
but it's actually not sad because like the puppy doesn't know. Like that is reality. There is no other reality than the darkness that he lives in. And so from my perspective, where I am not ignorant, I know all the facts and I have a broader perspective. To me, it's depressing, but to the puppy, it's life. And it's no different than the puppy that's experiencing life next to him, right?
Yeah, I guess animals don't have the ability to do like comparison the way we can, because obviously like even if somebody is born blind, like a human, they're surrounded by people who are not, who are going to communicate with them and tell them, "Oh, here's what you're missing out on." Versus a puppy that like obviously animals can't communicate with each other, but I don't think it operate like I don't think it works the same way where like his little puppy friends could or like siblings could be telling him like, "Oh, you're missing out on being able to see the birds instead of just hear them," or being able
Woof
to
woof, bitch. Sucks, doesn't it? No, but like they don't there's no jealousy, right? Like I think in this specific context that's what it comes down to. Like in a human situation there might be self-pity and or jealousy, right? And a dog is not going to experience either of those things.
Right, exactly. For you thinking that that season 2 had nothing worth talking about, I feel like we did all right.
I feel like we padded it, though. We barely talked about
I was just
the
going to say
episodes.
it's all about how much you can extrapolate. Like we had a whole conversation about Native American, like I don't even know all the paths we went down on the tall grass episode. So,
And that only happened because, well, I guess it was the whole like idea of mythology and stuff like that.
yeah, it was like a springboard into it. But that's why this podcast is limited to everything, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
true.
point.
Exactly. We've come full circle.
This is absolutely what we had in mind when we named it.
It kind of is. I don't know. It kind of is, like it's like we all love films, and so like that's what we want to focus the podcast around. But like what's the point of consuming content? I don't want to use that. I hate that term. What's the point of watching
Content?
films? What's the point of watching films? I don't like consuming content because that makes us a bunch of like
Then why
uh
do you do it?
No, he
okay,
doesn't like the
but
term
what I'm
consuming
saying,
content.
I don't like the terminology consuming content. I think it like
We
takes
are
away from like
interacting with
the
art.
engaged experience.
You're
Yeah,
interacting
so
with
like
someone
we're all
else's
watching
art.
something. What's the point of watching something if it doesn't elicit a response that you want to talk about? If you watch something that doesn't make you want to talk about afterwards, that was some trash that you just watched. Like that
Or you are like
it shouldn't have
broken.
been made.
Or you're broken, which
Or you're
kind of goes
broken.
back to the
Could be
attention
user
span
error.
thing that we were talking about, because I think it's really unfortunate. Like I know people who will consume, I would say consume is probably the right word for them. They'll consume all kinds of different media. Like somebody who can go watch something like, just something dumb that is not a well-made film, and then go and watch something that gets lauded as this piece of art, like somebody like someone who can watch a Marvel movie and like Dune Part 2 and have the exact same reaction to them and be like, yeah, it was entertaining. And that's as much as of a reaction as it gets out of them. And it's like,
Wait, is this person a good thing? Like, is that a good
no, I'm saying I don't think that's a good thing. I
re-
don't think that's
Oh,
I mean, like, not that you shouldn't be allowed to be entertained by both, but I think if that's the extent of all you have to say about it, like, you don't feel like there's anything else worth breaking down. You don't feel like there's anything, it didn't elicit any kind of emotional response from you. Like, you watched both, which are arguably very different calibers of filmmaking and storytelling and just art. And you had exactly the same reaction to both where you went, yeah, it was entertaining, it was like a good way to kill a couple of hours of time, and that's all you have. Like, I think that that's sad.
I agree with you, but I bet they're happier people.
Ignorance is bliss. They're blind
Ignorance
dogs, is what they are.
bliss. Blind dogs.
Just blind dogs
sniffing
enjoying a movie. Yeah, so that was fun. Season
Yeah.
3's up next.
Yeah. Are you feeling better about this one, Nate?
Yeah, I think so.
I would hope so, since doing this series was your idea.
I just really like this. I love even things like the tall grass, where it's like, okay, there's really not that much to talk about as far as the actual like episode is taken into account, but it's still really cool to watch and experience. Like the ideas that went into every single episode in all 3 of these seasons, I love. And there's more really good stuff in the next season, even if it's not something that maybe you want to sit down and have a conversation around. I think every single episode is I don't know if every single episode's worth watching, but I would say 90% of them are all definitely worth watching.
Yeah.
It depends on your standards. Like, yeah, there's a lot of episodes where I, you know, I wouldn't say like have to shut my brain off. It just doesn't even the episode itself doesn't turn my brain on, if
Yeah,
that
for
makes
sure.
sense.
For sure. That's
Mhm.
Yeah,
the Christmas
but it's
one
still
is that
entertaining.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think at least they could
Um
be worth watching because you can tell that, I guess at least, even if it isn't doing a lot for you specifically, like I think sometimes you can just appreciate the effort that was put in, that somebody was trying to do something original or unique. They weren't just sticking to a formula, which kind of can be refreshing, even if it doesn't actually stimulate you to ask deep questions.
and it's also like, I mean, it's just like short stories. It's like it's playing with an idea that the author or creator finds interesting, but maybe doesn't have the desire or doesn't feel that it's necessary or that there's enough content in the idea to extrapolate it to a full novel or to a full film, right? And I
For
actually
real.
respect that.
I would say some of the most compelling stories I've ever read are actually short stories. They're not full length novels where they tackle something that's like just either insane or very unusual. But yeah, you're not going to get 400 pages of it. You're going to get like maybe 60 tops. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that those are actually often the more compelling stories because if the author doesn't feel the need to flush out every possible explanation or uh, reaction, then it leaves you as the viewer or the reader with a lot more that you have to think about and like wrestle with on your own, which is what good art should do anyway, whether it's a film, a TV show, a piece of music, a painting. I think good art should make you have to uh, like look at yourself.
It should provoke thought.
Yeah, like it should provoke something. Yes. If art doesn't elicit a reaction, then it's not good art.
When you said like short stories are more in my head, I heard that short stories are more thought provoking. I agree with that because when you have like a longer, novel or series, it's way more fleshed out. Then you don't get to connect the dots as much. The author's doing it for you. He's doing all the work for you. You're much more along for the ride. Which I don't know, just reminded me of how we have this problem with short form content. Like there's definitely a sweet middle ground. Like I don't feel, more thought provoked from a 10-second clip than I do a 20-minute short film.
Well, yeah, I think that obviously you could go too short, where and
Well,
I
it's
mean
about
most
the
short form content is not storytelling. It's just time killing, which I think are very different.
Or it's a truncated version of something longer because people don't have the time or attention span to actually consume the thing that's longer.
What's this truncated mean, Mr. Books?
It means
It's something like cut
like
short.
abbreviated.
Yeah, it's like the summarized version.
Oh, okay. Hell yeah.
like the spark notes
Yeah.
of something, if it's truncated.
Exactly. Yeah. Which, I mean, to be fair,
Spark
like we
notes.
complain about like the iPad kids and short attention spans, but it's like when I was in high school, like everybody was Spark Notes and stuff. Like nobody was reading Jane Eyre. They were all like, Spark Notesing it. So it's been a problem for a while.
Agreed, but obviously it wasn't nearly as rampant. Like people, even the people I knew who were spark notesing, I think that came more out of just a lot of it was just a disinterest in school, because those were people that could still, like, if it was a book they wanted to read, they were absolutely going to sit down and read the whole thing, or just being able to sit and consume a movie without needing to check their phone or be doing something else, and without having to speed up the time, like the playback rate, that they could just sit and enjoy something still. And I don't want to say that like every single person has devolved into this, like, everything has to be snappy and quick, but I think that it's definitely, the problem is become exacerbated. Like, it's far more dramatic now than it was when we were younger. I think it was more contained at that point, or maybe not contained, but like relegated to very specific things, like Spark Notes, when people didn't want to do their schoolwork, but they were absolutely willing to dedicate hours and hours of their time and attention to things that they cared about. And I think a lot of it is, so many of these people just don't have things to care about anymore. Like, they're not invested in a book series or a movie franchise or a game. They just need next, because that's what TikTok and Instagram's algorithms have kind of programmed their brains to do, because it gives you a little hit of dopamine and you want that, and it keeps you coming back for more, and you've never trained your brain to do anything else.
Alright, but the fuck is a Spark Note? I heard you guys say it like 9 times in a minute, and I've never heard that until now in my life. Is that just a summary?
Spark
Is it like
Notes?
some program that you guys did in your school? Yeah.
It
what
was a
the hell?
website. It was a website where they would summarize books, all kinds of books, like textbooks and novels, and they would give they had like
Picture
different
books.
lengths of things, so you could get like literally a bullet point list, and then you could also read like some paragraphs, and then sometimes it would go chapter by chapter and give you a summary as well. So there were different lengths of summaries, but basically, yeah, people would Spark Notes it. That was what it was, like, the website was called, if they didn't want to actually sit down and read a novel for school. And I don't think it was even that always people did it for the whole novel. Like, I know I had people that I went to school with that it was like, if we were reading a book in class, maybe most of the time they were good about reading the chapters ahead of time, but then they forgot, and like we knew we were going to have a quiz that morning, and so they were just Spark Notesing the chapter, so that they could try to take the quiz and not fail,
I think that is one like positive argument for not immortality, but a longer lifespan, is that you can actually, you can read more. We have such a short life, and there's so much content to consume, and we just don't have enough time.
That's why we need a couple hundred more years.
Can you imagine the length of podcasts if we had a longer lifespan? Like, we could do this episode for like 24 hours, and it'd be like okay, because
We're not sacrificing anything, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah.
There's no opportunity cost.
For real.
Exactly.
Speaking of opportunity cost, this is totally we're gonna do it like a 90-degree. But I remember I had an economics quiz in college, and one of the questions was, what is opportunity cost? And one of the multiple choice answers was $12.95, and I remember being like, I wish.
It's situational. That could be true.
I was like, wouldn't that be
That's amazing.
great?
I'm pretty sure I've heard you use that before when people mention opportunity cost. You're like $12.95.
Yep, $12.95. It stuck with me.
If it's only $12.95, you're not making very much of your job. $12.95, like $12.95?
No, like the year $12.95, Aaron.
Wait, what? Okay, that's sarcasm, right? How would that make any sense? Opportunity cost.
I don't understand.
What's opportunity cost? $12.95.
I don't understand how like what I get paid at my job would have anything to do with $12.95 being bad for opportunity cost.
Well, because what is opportunity cost? It's what it costs to be doing something when you could be doing something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But what about opportunity
If-
cost for something that happens on a Saturday when I'm not getting paid?
If that opportunity cost is only $12.95, I guess it depends on how much time, how much opportunity cost we're talking about. Because if it's, a second, then $12.95 is, that's some real. You must be making some good money. But if it's like an hour or a day,
Okay. I guess I was thinking of it as like not the actual time that, and not that it making one choice means you have to give up another, but just that like, hey, if you make this choice, it's like you'll like almost like you could do the other thing still, but it's gonna cost you $12.95.
$12.95 what?
years apparently.
Dollars.
Pigs.
Eggs. That's a lot more than 12. That's a lot of $12.95 eggs.
Oh my
spendy.
goodness. Just like 2 weeks ago, we had eggs for like $2, $2.50, $2.95, something like that,
What?
at the store that I work at. Yeah, and then
Did you buy them all?
today, no, but a lot of other people were. We have chickens, on the property, so
Oh, nice.
we have more eggs than we know what to do with.
Nice.
Yeah, we're
Lucky.
rolling in the dough.
Why don't you just rub it in for us plebs
For
over
a
here?
dozen eggs today. Yeah, I don't know what opportunity cost you guys are talking about. For a dozen eggs, $8,
It hurts. That's
which
physically painful.
yeah, I don't know. I haven't been in the egg game for a little bit since I moved here, but
I didn't know you were ever in the egg game.
oh, I was, believe me. I love eggs.
Before there were potatoes, there were eggs in Aaron's life.
That's a callback.
What were you saying, Nate?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, around here, I think the cheapest right now you can get them is like $6 a dozen, which is still outrageous for the cheapest, most unethically produced eggs you can possibly
Right.
get.
I'd go check on those prices because they were about that much last week over here too. Well, then again, you live on the other side of the country, so
It's a
who
bit
knows
cheaper
what the
over
hell's
here.
going on over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also am not in the Portland area, so
I'm not in the port. I'm an hour and a half away.
where are you, Vancouver?
I'm about an hour west of Vancouver.
Okay. Well, either way, I'm
Yeah.
I'm in a different state as well. I'm in Reno, so it's.
Reno's not a state, sweetie.
I'm aware of that.
Good
I'm
luck.
saying I'm in a different state. Period. I'm in Reno. Like, I'm not saying that Reno is the state. Come on, reader boy.
Okay.
No, he got you there.
Too many times. It's been, yeah, beat to death.
I'm just saying. Okay, I would like to add to that the fact that you wanted to use selects as a noun.
That's a thing. Hey, I'm gonna. No, 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 no,
It's
no, no, no,
not
no,
a
no, no, no.
thing. It's
Yes, yes, it is.
What
Yes, it
are you
is.
guys
No,
talking
it's
about?
Yes, it is.
okay.
Stuff
then
you should
use-
know. Podcast.
No. Use
do
the
it.
word.
Select.
They do it.
Use the word select singular as a noun.
I think plural nouns can exist without singular nouns existing.
I don't think they can.
Aaron, do you think the word selects can be a plural noun? As in, these are our.
As in like a synonym for picks or selection.
Yeah, I think so. It depends on the. It would depend on the context of the sentence itself and how well it,
Okay,
rolls off the tongue.
please use it in a sentence where it makes sense as a noun and not a verb.
This isn't a hill I'm where,
Yes,
I
it is,
wanna die
Aaron.
on. I don't give
No,
a, I-
you need
I
to.
don't
Because
give a
here's the
fuck.
thing. I tried to look it up. I was giving you the benefit of the doubt, Nate, and I did a little research, and I cannot find anybody anywhere that will define it as ever being able to be used
'Kay.
as a noun.
Aaron,
So he's a trendsetter.
tell me if this sounds weird. Limited to Everything, episode number 21, Love, Death, and Robots, season 1 selects.
Yeah.
No. You can't.
Do
I'm
the
fine
same
with-
thing, but with select.
No. It would be selections. Selection is the word that you want. Or it needs to be
'Kay,
picks
the-
or choices. Or like you suggested,
There's-
cuts. It can't be selects. It's not a noun.
It does have like
It's
a skeevy vibe. Like if you were a dude with a trench coat with watches, on the inside, you'd be like, "Hey, take a look at my selects."
I'm not sure if
I
I'm
don't know.
tracking
Or
on that.
selection, yeah.
There's another there's another podcast that does this. It's called Stuff You Should Know, and they're both very well informed, educated people, and many of their
all right. That is an appeal to authority, and that's a logical fallacy, Nate.
listen, they have done like thousands of episodes, and so sometimes they'll bring back
so
the old
they're
episodes,
inherently
and so
right?
they're going back and picking older episodes that they liked, and they're like reproducing them, and they call them Stuff You Should Know Selects.
Yeah, I don't think that to use it is to commit a crime. I think it's perfectly valid. I just don't think it's a bit of a niche use.
I'm just saying I don't think. Okay, I would also say maybe it's different in their case because if they're going back and they're doing like they're picking from their own episodes, then they are like the selects are of their own stuff. So I think that title reads differently versus us being like, I don't think you can do select. You can't select.
Well, I'm sorry,
I don't
what? They're going back through their catalog of episodes. We're going through the catalog of a season of a TV show. What's the difference?
I know. I'm saying I think that the title reads a little differently. I still don't think it's a correct use of the word. I still think they're wrong. I'm just saying I think that title reads a little differently if they're selecting from their own catalog versus us picking from someone else's. I don't know. I still don't think either one is a correct use of the word. I'm not defending that. I don't think it is.
How long were you guys arguing about this when this whole,
This argument just
what was the
started
inception
yesterday.
of this? How
Just a couple of texts.
and is still going?
No, just a couple of texts is all it was. We haven't
Have you guys
fleshed out our
thought about
arguments.
the opportunity
This
cost?
is the most we've talked about it, actually. It's I
I
just
hope so.
I was trying to get some like details ironed out on, that thumbnail and everything that I'm working on. And I was like, I don't think selects is the right word. So I was like, can we pick something else? And so that's where the conversation came from because every time I was reading it, I was like, this is bothering me. Like, I don't think this is right. But Nate suggested doing choice cuts instead. And I'm fine with that.
I like choice cuts. That's kind of a substitution I'm okay with.
Feels like we're butchers, but I'm fine with that. I like that better than
Choice cut. Yeah, that's kind of funny.
I'm fine with that one. To me, that's fine.
The fuck is a Spark Note?